There was once a time when we might have said it was crypto versus the world, or at least crypto versus the world's central banks and fiat drenched governments. But now the whole world seems more fractured, polarized, and subdivided between those who want freedom and those who want control, those who yearn for a free money and those who only feel comfortable in the embrace of the king's money. The world is more complicated, and now we seem to have both enemies and allies at every level. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss this whole immense divide between free money and government money, how the manipulation of government blockchain money is already in full swing, Texas trying to protect crypto customers, the Cardano Foundation writing about Aiken, some debate about the future security of Bitcoin, and Ken Kodama stepping up his social media presence. If you couldn't tell if this is Donald Trump Jr. or Hunter Biden following in his father's footsteps to become the oldest president ever, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Watching those House Financial Services Committee hearings with Gensler this week really drove home the point for me. It used to be when we thought about the wider world in crypto and we thought about the bigger picture themes in crypto, a lot of the rhetoric in crypto was about crypto versus the world, crypto versus the central bank, even crypto versus the government. And it could have been almost any government you were talking about, depending on who you are in crypto. But it was certainly crypto versus big traditional institutions, banking, government, things like that. It's different now. Things have changed. I think the crypto virus has infected every level of society, every part of the world almost. Everybody is starting to end up on one side or the other of the crypto debate. And it's not a debate about cryptography or about math or about software. It's really a debate about freedom and control, about free money and the king's money, the government's money. And it seems like people either end up embracing the idea of freedom, even taking the risk that it might bring chaos. Because whenever you embrace freedom, a new type of freedom, there's always a chance that that comes with a healthy dose of chaos, which may be good or bad. I'm using healthy in the sort of like Western sense of the word, meaning large, a large dose, because it may be healthy or unhealthy, as in good for you or bad for you. Chaos can be good or bad. But there are a lot of people who are willing to embrace freedom, even if it comes with a little bit of chaos. And then in the other camp, you've got people who embrace control because they think that control will maintain order or it will bring order. And no surprise, those are often the same people who currently have control, the incumbents. The people who think they currently have control are often the ones who embrace control. And we've seen this play out in the US Congress. So if we look at this list, this is the same list we looked at before from the Crypto Action Network. This is our crypto scorecard. If we look at their list for the House, what we see is that this is not a left or right issue. This is not about Republicans and Democrats. This is about people who embrace freedom and a free money versus people who embrace control. And it's the same story in the Senate. Here's a list for the Senate. We see the same thing. Democrats and Republicans on the A and B list. In the House, Democrats and Republicans on the A and B list. And you know, it would be an interesting experiment to go through this list and look at what the A and B people have in common and what the D and F people have in common. I have my suspicions, but I won't share that. I won't share that right now until I actually see the data. But I think it'll be an interesting little statistical investigation to see if we can find some common themes between the people who support crypto and the people who are against crypto. But it definitely seems to be a part of a bigger conversation that Western societies are having. And that has to do with how much control over everything the government should have. And we see this a lot in sort of like the censorship discussion. Like, what kind of relationship between large and I'll go ahead and call them monopolies, large monopolistic social media platforms, how much of a relationship should they have with government? Should government be able to do what apparently has been going on for years, where the government has such a tight relationship with these monopolistic social media platforms that they can go ahead and censor almost anyone? This is something brand new. This level of control over society is something that hasn't been transparent, at least to the public. You could argue, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there were periods when newspapers, say back in the day, had far too cozy a relationship with certain segments of the government at different times. I'm sure those kinds of things were happening in traditional media before the digital age as well. But now that we have this level of transparency that we sometimes get in the digital age, it's become this larger narrative, this bigger conversation. And crypto seems like it's been caught up in this conversation as well. And it's weird because it has nothing to do with crypto. It doesn't have to do with cryptography. It doesn't have to do with software. It has everything to do with how much control the government should actually have over virtually all segments of society, all things we do in life. It's a question about the role of government, whether government should be involved in social media, whether government should be involved in money, whether government should be telling us, certain things having to do with certain viral pandemics. All of these things are sort of on the table, and people are a little bit unclear. But it's good and bad for crypto, because it used to be crypto could look out and say who we thought our enemies were, and before, we seemed to have no allies almost. But now it's gotten complicated because we have allies and enemies seemingly around every corner. I like this better. I like it not being a left or a right issue. I like to believe that there are enlightened people of all kinds of different political viewpoints who, once exposed to crypto, once they actually understand crypto, can make an educated decision and won't just reject it outright. Like, we definitely see those people. We definitely see some people who they hear about crypto and they want nothing to do with it. And you can tell exactly where they're coming from when you hear them talk about crypto. But it's good to know that people on both sides of the aisle could look at the crypto issue and choose freedom, choose this free money over the king's money in its digital form, which would obviously give government a lot more control. And if you don't believe that the government money that becomes digital money, that becomes something like a CBDC or some other blockchain-esque money, even though we wouldn't really define what they're trying to do as blockchains, then you should check this out. So this obviously looks like some smart contract code, and we see this function called recall. This recall function, okay, that doesn't look good. You don't necessarily want your stablecoin issuer to be able to recall the coins that you have in your possession. So this might be, not the greatest stablecoin. Then we look down here and there's this burn function. This poster says there's also a burn function that allows them to burn your money as well. You see this kind of stuff and you think to yourself, okay, this is like a bad stable coin. But we already know these kinds of things are going on with stable coins because they want to be able to freeze people's money and burn people's money if they're on some kind of a sanctions list or something like that. So if we go to the actual smart contract, you can see that recall function here at line 250, that burn function here at line 264. And if we scroll up, we'll be able to see what kind of a shady crypto institution, probably offshore, some kind of shady offshore crypto institution is issuing this stable coin that has these burn functions to burn your coins, apparently, and this recall function to just straight take your coins away. Who is this? What do we have here? This is the official institutional euro stablecoin issued by Société Générale. Oh, it's not a shady crypto institution. It's actually one of the largest banks in the world. a very large French bank. This is what they have to do just to comply with government regulations. They have to have things like this in their stablecoin. This is still just a private party. This is just a bank. This is a bank issuing an ERC20 stablecoin. And we get to take a peek at it because this is all open source. But even with this open source ERC20 stablecoin, we see they have these kind of oppressive mechanisms built right into the smart contract. And, I mean, I'm not blaming Société Générale here because they're probably just trying to comply with the kinds of sanctions and AML and anti-terrorist financing kind of guidelines that they're forced to comply with. But if they're already doing stuff like this out in the open, what's going to be built into a closed source government money when the king's money becomes digital, when it becomes a true CBDC, when it's running on something that looks like a one node blockchain? What kinds of crazy stuff are they going to be able to do with the money then? I think everybody is now realizing that the potential, at least, for it to go in a direction that's much darker than all of this, that potential is already there because the capability is there. I think a lot of people at every level of government, at every level of society, recognize this danger. And some people are just embracing that because they're only comfortable with the king's money and the order they think that brings. And some people are rejecting that because they yearn for freedom. Regardless of what you might think of their other politics, it looks like the state of Texas is definitely on the freedom side of this debate. So they just passed this bill, which does some good things, I think, for crypto. So in Texas, if you're a large digital asset service provider that's over 500 customers or at least 10 million in customer funds, you have to do a couple of things. The first is that you cannot commingle funds. You cannot commingle your own funds with those of your customers. This is obviously to prevent the FTX Alameda kind of scenario. Then they have to provide proof of reserves. So this has to be available to the customers at least quarterly. At least quarterly, they have to show the customer any outstanding liabilities owed to the customer and the customer's digital assets held in reserve by the digital asset service provider. And then each year, no later than 90 days after the end of the fiscal year, they have to provide the Texas Department of Banking with a report that includes an attestation by the digital asset service provider of outstanding liabilities to the customers. And they say you can document this using ZK encryption or similar industry standards. So you can tell they've actually been talking to people in crypto. They at least know about zero knowledge encryption. And they say you must provide evidence of customer assets held by the person, documented again using ZK encryption, a copy of the provider's plan under Part C to provide proof of reserves to the customers, and an attestation by an auditor that the information in the report is true and accurate. So we're going to have proof of reserves for the customer and an audited report to the Texas Department of Banking in terms of proof of reserves. This is something we haven't really ever had in crypto, a requirement of proof of reserves. I hope a lot of states do something similar. The Cardano Foundation has written a report about Aiken. So you might have heard me say on this channel previously that I thought what some of these non-functional programming solutions for smart contract development in Cardano, I felt like they needed to be embraced by at least one of the three entities, one of the three founding entities in Cardano. And here we go. Cardano Foundation is writing articles about Aiken. I think this is a great move forward. I think we've really got to embrace some of these easier solutions to onboard developers into the Cardano ecosystem. And it looks like the Cardano Foundation is doing just that. So you can cruise on over here to the CardanoFoundation.org and check out this article. Here's something I want to put on your radar. So when I first got into crypto, I got into Bitcoin. This was about a decade ago. I got into Bitcoin, and already at that time, there was a certain debate raging that you don't hear about too often these days. But the debate was this. We obviously have the Bitcoin halvening. The Bitcoin halvening event is arguably the biggest event in crypto. And every time we have a halvening event, it does just what the name implies. It cuts in half the Bitcoin block reward. And so the question has always been, hey, this is a trend line approaching zero. We're going to keep cutting the reward in half, in half, in half, and eventually it's going to be a very small reward. If transaction fees on the Bitcoin network don't increase to replace those constantly reducing, or every 4 years or so reducing block rewards, the incentive for miners is going to be less and less and less. And this might have security implications. This puts into question the long-term security picture for Bitcoin. And before you jump out of your chair and get super mad at me, there are a lot of counter arguments. This debate has been going on for over a decade. I've seen all the counter arguments. I'm going to let you come to your own decision about this. But of course, people say things like, yeah, but the value of Bitcoin has historically just gone up and up and up. So even though you're getting less Bitcoin as a block reward, the value might be more, and people have all kinds of other arguments why this is not a big deal. But there's a significant portion of the population who does think this is a big deal. And this is coming up again in this thread. So this poster says, took a quick look at Bitcoin's security spend. In short, it's not looking good. Fees will replace block rewards is completely not the case so far. What we instead see is diminishing security over time, surprisingly consistently. This makes Bitcoin vulnerable. And this is a long thread, and people very aggressively are disagreeing with this poster, but it's something to be aware of. This is something to be aware of and come to your own decision on. Because if you look at this chart, you can see annual security spend goes up from 18 million all the way up to 15 billion. And then it's dropped back down since 2021. And you could argue, oh, this is just a function of the Bitcoin halving cycle and it'll go back up, that kind of thing, because the price of Bitcoin will go back up. But then you look at the percentage. So this is annual security spend. And people even argue over whether that's correct terminology. Annual security spend being sort of correlated to the block rewards. I'll let you come to your own decision on that as well. But if you do look at the percentage of market cap, it is an interesting trend. We go from 46.9% back in 2011. And you can see by 2013, when I first experienced this debate, the percentage here was already down significantly from this 46.9%. We're already down to 13.9%. And it's just gone down and down and down until the last 3 years, it's been under 2%. This is a pretty significant change. So you can come over here and read this thread and come to your own decision on this. But this is a trend to be aware of in the largest market cap crypto asset in the entire crypto landscape. Finally, here's something new. As we sort of make this transition into Voltaire governance and many different parties playing bigger roles in Cardano, we're now seeing Ken Kodama, the founder and CEO of Emergo, and of course, co-founder of Cardano, with a stepped up social media presence. We're seeing a lot more engagement in Twitter by Ken Kodama. In this post, he's going to give you a whole rundown of different things that have been going on in Cardano. He says Voltaire and SIP 1694 are a couple of the biggest topics in Cardano these days. I wanted to share these and a few other things trending in Cardano over the past couple of months. I love this trend. I love this. I would love to see more out of Emergo, more out of the Cardano Foundation, more out of everyone. We have this gigantic community, and it has many different institutions involved in the community. We have 3 founding institutions and a lot of other institutions. I love to see them doing stuff like this, just sort of generally engaging in Cardano content, talking about things going on in Cardano. I would love to hear Ken Kodama chime in on various issues in Cardano. I'd love to hear what he thinks. I'd love to hear about everything they're doing on the African continent. I think we've got a lot of fantastic people in Cardano, and we do need a lot more people to start engaging in discourse about Cardano, generally, specifically, all of it. I think we have a beautiful future ahead of us with a lot of very smart and dynamic people. So I think it's going to be a good future for Cardano. I hope you've had a great week. It's springtime. It is definitely springtime in North America. I hope you've got some fun outdoor plans this weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.